You answered 14 emails this morning, sat through 2 meetings, responded to messages the moment they came in, stayed late, and somehow, by the end of the day, you made almost no real progress on the thing that actually matters. That's not a time management problem. That's not a discipline problem. That is what Cal Newport would call a shallow work problem. And according to him, it is quietly destroying the careers of millions of intelligent, hardworking people who have no idea it's happening. This book was published in 2016. It has only become more relevant since then because every single distraction Newport warned about has gotten worse. The notifications are louder, the inboxes are fuller, the expectation of instant response is higher. And the people who figured out how to ignore all of it, they are pulling further ahead every year. Here's what they know that most people don't. What deep work actually is, Newport opens with a story about Carl Jung. In the early 20th century, Jung was one of the most prominent psychiatrists in the world, actively practicing, publishing, and debating at the highest levels of his field. And yet, at the peak of his career, he regularly disappeared to a stone tower he had built himself in the Swiss village of Bollingen. No electricity, no visitors, just hours of uninterrupted thinking and writing. What came out of those retreats became some of the most influential ideas in the history of psychology. Newport uses Jung not to romanticize isolation, but to make a specific point. Jung did not retreat instead of engaging with the world. He did both. He had a busy practice in Zurich and a stone tower in Bollingen. The tower was not an escape from his work. It was his work, the part that produced everything worth reading. Newport defines deep work precisely. Professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. The opposite of deep work is shallow work. Emails, meetings, administrative tasks, quick replies, status updates. Necessary, often, but not the work that moves things forward, not the work that builds a career, not the work that compounds. The problem Newport identifies is this. Most modern workplaces are structurally designed to maximize shallow work. Open offices, instant messaging, the expectation of always-on availability. All of it fragments attention in ways that make deep work nearly impossible, and almost no one is talking about the cost. What this looks like in practice. For 1 week, track your hours honestly in 2 columns, deep work and shallow work. Deep work means focused, cognitively demanding single-task concentration with no interruptions. Shallow work means everything else. Most people discover that the ratio is far worse than they assumed. The discovery itself is the first step, because you cannot fix what you have not measured.
Why it's becoming rarer and more valuable at the same time. Newport makes an economic argument early in the book that is worth sitting with. 2 things are happening simultaneously in the modern economy. Deep work is becoming increasingly rare, and it is becoming increasingly valuable. The people who can do it, who can sit with a hard problem for hours, produce elite-level output, and master difficult skills quickly, are pulling ahead. The people who cannot are being replaced, either by automation or by the smaller number of people who can. Newport calls this the deep work hypothesis, and it is not a soft motivational claim. It is a structural observation about how value is created in a knowledge economy. The reason deep work is becoming rare has nothing to do with people getting lazier or less intelligent. It is because the tools of modern work, email, Slack, social media, open plan offices, create a culture of constant connectivity that is fundamentally incompatible with sustained concentration.
Newport points to something he calls the principle of least resistance. In the absence of clear metrics for productivity, people default to doing what is easiest and most visible. Responding quickly to messages looks like productivity. Being always available looks like dedication. But Newport argues this is the industrial age definition of productivity, visible effort, being applied to work where it actively destroys value. What this looks like in practice: ask yourself honestly, how much of what you do in a given day could be completed by a reasonably competent person with access to your email and calendar? If the answer is most of it, that is not a comfortable answer, but it is a useful one.
The 4 philosophies. Find your version. Newport does not give one prescription for how to do deep work. He gives 4 philosophies because the right one depends entirely on your work and your life. The monastic philosophy is the most extreme. Practitioners eliminate or radically minimize shallow obligations entirely. Newport's example is Donald Knuth, the legendary computer scientist who does not have an email address. Not a filtered one, no email address. He communicates by postal mail only. His reasoning? The work he does requires years of uninterrupted concentration, and no email is worth what it costs in depth. Most people cannot and should not go monastic, but understanding the philosophy clarifies the principle. The bimodal philosophy is more realistic for most. You divide your time, dedicating clearly defined extended periods to deep work while leaving the rest open to everything else. Carl Jung did this. Deep retreat in Bollingen, active practice in Zurich. Not simultaneously, sequentially, in chunks.
The rhythmic philosophy is the most practical for most people in conventional jobs. You pick a specific time each day, the same time every day for deep work. You protect it like a meeting you cannot cancel. The rhythm removes the decision of when to start. Over time, the brain learns to shift into depth at that hour automatically. The journalistic philosophy is for people whose schedules are genuinely unpredictable. You develop the ability to switch into deep work mode whenever a window appears. 30 minutes, an hour, whatever is available. Newport warns this is the hardest philosophy to adopt and does not recommend it for beginners. It requires a trained mind that can drop into concentration on demand. What this looks like in practice? Do not try to adopt all 4. Pick one that fits your actual life. The rhythmic philosophy is the right starting point for most people. Choose one.
Grand gestures and the whiteboard effect. This is one of the more counterintuitive ideas in the book, and Newport gives examples that are hard to forget. J.K. Rowling, struggling to finish the final Harry Potter book, checked into a suite at the Balmoral Hotel in Edinburgh, a 5-star hotel, and wrote there until it was done. She did not need the hotel. She needed the signal it sent to her brain. This work is serious. This environment is different. The normal rules are suspended. Bill Gates takes what he calls think weeks twice a year, 2 weeks of complete isolation where he reads, thinks, and writes with no meetings or obligations. Multiple major Microsoft decisions originated in those weeks. Newport calls these grand gestures, a significant investment of effort or money that signals to your brain the importance and seriousness of the work. The novelty of the environment, combined with the psychological weight of the commitment, makes depth easier to achieve than it would be at your regular desk. He also describes something called the whiteboard effect, the observation that working through a hard problem with one other person at a shared whiteboard can push both people deeper than either would go alone. Not a meeting, not a discussion. 2 people, 1 problem, working it through together. The presence of the other person short-circuits the instinct to avoid depth. What this looks like in practice: you do not need a hotel suite. The grand gesture can be as simple as going to a different location. A library, a coffee shop you never use, a rented co-working space for one afternoon. The point is the signal, not the luxury. Change the environment when the work is important. Embrace boredom, the training nobody does. This is the section most people skip, and it is arguably the most important one. Newport's argument is direct. If you spend every moment of downtime reaching for your phone, on the elevator, waiting in line, in the first 3 minutes of waking up, you are training your brain to need stimulation constantly. And a brain trained to need constant stimulation cannot do deep work on demand. He is not arguing for digital detox weekends or social media cleanses. He is arguing for something more fundamental. You need to become comfortable with boredom, not occasionally, regularly. The ability to concentrate is a skill, and like any skill, it atrophies without practice. Every time you reach for distraction instead of sitting with discomfort, you are practicing the wrong thing. Newport recommends what he calls productive meditation, taking time when your body is occupied but your mind is free, walking, commuting, exercising, and deliberately directing your thoughts to a specific professional problem. No phone, no podcast, just thinking. Most people find this almost impossible at first. That difficulty is the diagnostic. It tells you exactly how much your attention has fragmented.
What this looks like in practice, pick one daily activity where you normally reach for your phone. A commute, a walk, lunch alone, and don't. Not to be disciplined, to practice. Give your mind a specific problem to work on. Notice how quickly it tries to escape. That noticing is the beginning of training it not to.
Drain the shallows, structuring your day. Newport's final rule is the most practical, and it starts with an instruction that sounds extreme until you understand the reasoning. Schedule every minute of your day. Not to be rigid, not to eliminate spontaneity, but because if you don't decide in advance how your time will be spent, something else will decide for you, and it will almost always be shallow work. The method is called time blocking. Before your workday begins, divide it into blocks and assign every block a task or category. When the day changes, and it will, you revise the blocks. The goal is not to follow the schedule perfectly. The goal is to always be making a deliberate decision about what you are doing and why. Newport also recommends negotiating a shallow work budget with yourself or your manager, an honest estimate of how many hours per week are legitimately required for shallow work. In most knowledge jobs, it is somewhere between 30 and 50%. If it is higher than that, something is structurally wrong, and naming that clearly is the beginning of fixing it. He ends this section with what he calls the shutdown ritual, a fixed routine at the end of each workday that signals to your brain that work is done. A review of open tasks, a check that nothing urgent is unaddressed, and a verbal declaration. Shutdown complete. It sounds almost too simple. Newport's point is that without a clear signal, your brain continues processing work problems into the evening, not productively, just anxiously. The shutdown ritual closes the loop.
What this looks like in practice? Tonight, before you finish work, write down every open task or project you are currently carrying. For each one, confirm that it either has a next action assigned or is somewhere you will see it tomorrow. Then say, out loud if necessary, "Done for today." Notice what happens to the background noise in your head.
The honest critique, what Newport doesn't say loudly enough. Newport's arguments are compelling and largely correct, but there are two things worth being honest about. First, deep work is significantly easier if you have structural control over your own schedule. Newport is a tenured computer science professor at Georgetown. He has a level of autonomy over his time that most people, in open plan offices, on reactive teams, in customer-facing roles, simply do not have. The book acknowledges this occasionally, but does not center it enough. Applying these ideas in a conventional job requires negotiation, boundary setting, and sometimes genuine friction with workplace culture. That is harder than any philosophy makes it sound. Second, Newport's treatment of social media is blunt, to the point of being occasionally simplistic. His advice to quit platforms unless they provide substantial, irreplaceable professional value is reasonable in principle. But for many people, especially those building audiences, running small businesses, or working in creative fields, social media is not just distraction, it is infrastructure. The craftsman approach he recommends, only use a tool if its benefits substantially outweigh its costs, is correct. The application requires more nuance than the book gives it. Neither of these critiques undermines the central argument. The ability to focus deeply is genuinely rare, genuinely valuable, and genuinely trainable. The book's prescription works. It just works best when you adapt it to your actual life, rather than trying to replicate Newport's.
Newport ends the book with a line that is worth reading slowly. A deep life is a good life. Not a rich life, not a productive life, a good life. His argument, ultimately, is not purely economic. It is that the experience of doing something hard with full attention to the limit of your ability and completing it is one of the few reliable sources of meaning in professional life. The emails, the meetings, the constant availability, none of it produces that feeling. The work you keep putting off because it is hard, that does. Newport has no social media accounts. He does not have a public email address. He has written 6 books, holds a tenured professorship at Georgetown, and is one of the most cited voices in the modern productivity conversation. He is not waiting until he has fewer distractions. He built his life around the absence of them. That is the argument. The rest is implementation. If you made it this far, you already know which part of your work has been getting crowded out. Here's one thing to do before this video ends. Name it. The specific project, the specific skill, the specific work you keep meaning to do but never quite reach. Write it down somewhere. Not as a goal, as a block in tomorrow's schedule. That is the entire system, reduced to one action. If this was useful, subscribe. We do this for one book at a time, without rushing it. And if you have a book you want us to cover next, drop it in the comments. We read every one.